We're joined now by Professor Mary Metcalfe, who's a Senior Research Associate at the University of Johannesburg. A warm welcome to you. So much to talk about, unfortunately so little time. But let's just first start with your view of the provinces and their performance, the Free State managing to hold on to its top position.
I think we have to start by saying that it is an absolute miracle that we have done so well. And it is not a miracle in the sense of anything other than the hard work of teachers, the hard work of learners, that meant that we only had a drop of 5%. The fact that it's a 5% drop, I think, makes it credible, because many South Africans would have been quite suspicious if we'd not seen a drop. We've seen that the different provinces maintained more or less stability in terms of their positional rankings. Free State again came first, Gauteng came second. Some provinces have improved in terms of the ranking, and that's KwaZulu-Natal and Limpopo and Western Cape, and some provinces have dropped in terms of the ranking. All provinces have in fact increased the number of learners that have written, which is really something that the country should be celebrating. There were fewer learners who actually wrote the National Senior Certificate relative to the learners that registered. This happens every year, and we have to just check that the learners who registered and didn't write have not left the system because of the frustrations of 2020, but that we don't allow them to drop out and bring them back into the system.
Professor Metcalfe, I want to look at the performance at district level. Gauteng receiving 6 out of 10 of the highest performing ones. What sets it apart? Because it has continually held on to its prowess in this regard.
What sets some of the provinces, what makes some of the provinces succeed more successfully is in fact linked to socio-economic status. And the provinces that succeed are those provinces which have higher concentrations of wealth within the province. This is consistent with all of the international research, which shows that performance in education is linked to socio-economic status. The second thing that sets some provinces apart is that they haven't inherited, even 20, 30 years on, the impacts of the apartheid legacy in terms of poor infrastructure, in terms of the poverty that's endemic in areas that were part of the historic Bantustans. So provinces such as KwaZulu-Natal, such as Eastern Cape, such as Limpopo, come from a long way back in terms of their rurality and the poverty, which is why I think the minister focused on the successes of KwaZulu-Natal, which despite the rurality, despite the large areas of poverty, has managed to increase the number of learners that have participated and increased their pass rate. So KwaZulu-Natal is now sitting at a pass rate of those that wrote of 77.6%, which is, I think, a real achievement.
Now, the minister also mentioned that there were quality passes at non-paying schools, that they've shown better results. Now, what is this as a result of? Is it also the cognizance that when the hard times hit, she did say when the going gets tough, the tough get tougher, that teachers and families leaned in, that they were better or they were more instrumental in the matriculants' ability to focus and study through this very tough year?
It's a consequence of gradual improvements in the education system over time, which are well explained in the technical report. Some of those improvements which will impact on the improved results in National Senior Certificate across the poorest schools as well as the wealthier schools are the increased attendance rates and completion at grade 10 and 11. So although the improvements are not as rapid as many South Africans would like to see, we are seeing improvements in fundamental performance in reading and maths, in school retention. that means that we will gradually be seeing improvements in the results of the NSC, remembering that we're going to be seeing the introduction of a general education and training certificate earlier before grade 12 in a few years' time.
Another interesting thing that the minister was emphasizing, that this cohort, had it not been for COVID, would have done much better than any other. But she also spoke about the issue of progressed learners. Now, I want to understand the importance of it, and especially in this context when we view the overall pass rate. So if we would have seen a significantly better overall mark were they not part of this. But we also saw many more of them achieve degree passes. So just break that down for us. What should we be understanding about progressed learners?
It's a topic that's so debated in South Africa, and I'll explain what my view is here. When you progress a learner, you are making a decision to say that even though the learner hasn't achieved as highly as they should in the preceding year, you consider it to be in the learner's best interest to proceed to the next year, because the risks of not doing that may be that we see higher levels of dropout. I'm not sure if you've ever failed a year, if anybody that you know has ever failed a year, but it's shattering to self-esteem. And the position of the DBE is that increasingly we should put support systems in place so that learners who are struggling are supported rather than suffer the social consequences of having to repeat and possibly drop out. And dropout is one of the greatest challenges facing our society. So a progressed learner is supported as much as possible by the school and by the system, but is allowed to attempt the next academic year. What the minister is saying is that many of those learners are now succeeding. Given a second chance of proceeding, they are actually passing. That is a challenge for all of us to say, when a learner does not do as well as they would like, there must be mechanisms to support them to succeed, because we cannot risk dropout.
Okay, a quick and final question, Professor Metcalfe. There were two very important exam papers that were leaked. Umalusi had said the integrity of matric results has been preserved. But let's understand what that means when we talk about systemic integrity. How is that judged so that all are sure that people did pass with merit and that there was no interference in the individual marks?
The investigations into the leak were multifaceted. There were what I would call forensic investigations in terms of actually tracing through the records of the medium of distribution, such as cell phone records, finding out how many learners actually had access to the paper. And that was a DBE investigation. But there's also, in the standardization process, which is run independently by Umalusi as a quality assurance body, an examination of comparisons of performance within individual schools relative, and as well as with individual learners relative to school-based assessments. So where there's a leakage, you get unexplained phenomenon like massive improvements that don't fit a pattern. Umalusi has confirmed that the leakage was small. I don't have the figures in my head, but it was, I think, about 150 students who had access to the leaked papers. The fear at the time for the DBE and for Umalusi was that in the age of digital sharing of information, it could have spread like wildfire. Okay. The evidence did not bear that out. Learners that did have access to the paper have been identified, and everyone else can be confident that their paper has the stamp of approval of the quality assurance body, Umalusi. Right.
Thank you, as always, for your time and your insights. Professor Mary Metcalfe, Senior Research Associate at the University of Johannesburg. Right, we're going to take a quick break. Do stay with us.
I'm an ex-offender. I served a 10-year sentence. Prison, e require like 16, 17 hours. Nakimamela radio every day. And Ukhozi FM gave me hope during my hopelessness days. Lebitso la ka ke Morwesi Theledi. I'm a CEO and founder of Ukhozi Solutions. Its primary focus is to deal with corruption, bribery, fraud, and theft. Imagine from prison to businesswoman/entrepreneur because of SABC Radio.
What we are seeing and we're concerned with is the extent